To truly grasp 14th century Granada, you must start with the Alhambra. It wasn't just a monument back then. What was life like inside its walls? From that elevated vantage point, rulers governed and welcomed ambassadors. They affirmed the Sultan's legitimacy and projected a specific image of power. This radically transformed the entire urban scene. Nasrid, Granada in that century wasn't a city resigned to its eventual demise. Rather, it was a dynamic, refined capital, bustling with trade, knowledge, intrigue, and ambition. Anyone entering it back then wouldn't have felt they were witnessing an ending, but rather a city that remained a vibrant focal point. The Nasrid dynasty had governed Granada since 1238, when Muhammad I began constructing the Alhambra and established his court seat there. However, it was in the 14th century that this hill gained its definitive structure. Viewed from the lower city, the Zabaka Hill projected a clear sense of hierarchy. Up above stood the Palatine and military city, housing the Alcazaba fortress, palaces, grand courtyards, courtly quarters, and the entire visible apparatus of government. Adjacent to this core lay the Generalife, an estate and recreational residence linked to the same palatial logic, complete with gardens, channeled water, and serene resting areas. Further down, across the Darro River, neighborhoods were clustered, with narrow streets, various trades, and the continuous clamor of urban life. Granada was not organized like a uniform postcard. Instead, it revolved around an elevated position from which power was both seen and displayed. This is why the Alhambra cannot be considered an isolated monument within the century's history. It was the central axis. Many other elements revolved around that central axis. The city required markets, skilled artisans, tax collection, goods transportation, jurists, diplomats, laborers, scribes, and intellectuals. The Al-Qaisariya concentrated an essential part of the silk trade and other valuable products. Over 200 shops were located there, and the complex would close its gates at night. Also nearby was the Alhambra, now known as Corral del Carbon, which served as accommodation for merchants and a storage facility for goods. All of this matters because the Alhambra's splendor wasn't sustained solely by ceremonies. It was also supported by urban labor, the circulation of wealth, and a truly functioning city. Water was another crucial element. In the Alhambra and Generalife, its purpose wasn't merely ornamental. It represented technical mastery, essential supply, and political expression. Water flowed through irrigation channels, supplied courtyards and gardens, and visually communicated a sense of order. This very culture of water extended down into the daily city. Public baths like the Bañuelo remind us that hygiene, bathing, and the social interactions tied to them continued to be an integral part of urban life. This helps us visualize Granada as a truly inhabited city, not just a collection of facades. Houses, courtyards, gardens, and baths were all part of the same world that culminated up above in the Palatine city, but this sophisticated capital existed under constant pressure. The 14th century for Granada was far from a peaceful era. The Nasrid kingdom had to skillfully navigate its relations with Castile, maintain internal stability, and carefully assess the benefits of alliances with the Marinids of North Africa. In 1340, one of the most severe blows arrived. The Battle of Rio Salado, fought on October 30th, resulted in a decisive defeat for the Muslim forces against the Castilian-Portuguese alliance. 4 years later, Algeciras fell. On the surface, it appeared Granada's maneuvering room was shrinking even further, yet the city continued to build. The more challenging the environment, the more crucial it became for Nasrid power to project stability, legitimacy, and capability. The Alhambra also expanded in response to this need. In this context, Yusuf was pivotal, reigning from 1333 to 1354, and shaping a crucial political aspect of the Alhambra. Under his direction, grand monumental gates, such as the Gate of Justice, were either erected or fortified, and the Comares Palace progressed, whose great throne room would eventually become one of the entire complex's most eloquent spaces. It wasn't merely about constructing beauty, it was about building authority. Nasrid architecture of the 14th century wasn't decorative in a superficial sense. It was designed to guide the visitor's gaze, positioning them before a power that aspired to appear steadfast, refined, and divinely protected, even when it recognized its delicate balance. That same ambition can be observed beyond the hilltop. In 1349, the Madrasa of Granada was inaugurated, founded in the name of Yusuf I. It was the only state madrasa in the entire history of Al-Andalus, and it also housed an important library. Granada didn't want to be merely a stronghold or a splendid court. It also aimed to be a center of knowledge. The city of the Alhambra was simultaneously a hub for higher learning, courtly poetry, jurists, and physicians. Then, precisely at that moment, the plague arrived. Between 1348 and 1349, the Black Death impacted the kingdom and struck Granada. The illness disrupted daily life, heightened uncertainty, and coexisted with the era's political tensions. Following Yusuf I's assassination in 1354, Muhammad V ascended to the throne. His journey perfectly encapsulates the century because it wasn't straightforward. He first reigned between 1354 and 1359, fell from power, went into exile, and then after 3 years, returned to reign until 1391. His second reign is so impressive precisely because Muhammad V didn't just return, he returned to culminate an era. Under him, the Alhambra achieved its most refined and renowned expression. The finest symbol of this culmination is the Patio of the Lions. It represents the pinnacle of Nasrid architecture, dated between 1362 and 1391. Nothing there is coincidental. The central fountain, the 12 lions, the galleries, the light, and the interplay of water transform the space into a total experience of power. But even at this peak, the city remained something broader than just its royal residence. In 1365, Muhammad V founded the Maristan, a Granadan hospital whose charitable function continued for over a century. Granada was a capital that managed its needs and sustained a complex urban life beyond the court. Yet all of this depended, directly or indirectly, on the stability radiating from the Palatine Hill. But it didn't end there. If one were to explore Granada at the close of the 14th century, they would then perceive two realities simultaneously. They would see the Alhambra above, growing ever more precise, sophisticated, and laden with political significance. And below, they would see a city of silk courtyards, bustling streets, knowledge, illness, commerce, and labor. They would hear news of defeats, treaties, and courtly intrigues, but also see a capital still producing wealth and confident. There lies the heart of the century. Granada wasn't yet living like a future ruin. It was living as a kingdom aware of its threats, yes, but still capable of responding to that menace with architecture, organization, and prestige. For this reason, Granada's 14th century marked its zenith, the century when the city achieved its most powerful, most refined, and most vibrant form. But this balance wouldn't last forever. In the subsequent century, everything would begin to change, and that same city which we see in its splendor today would eventually face its ultimate end. And that is exactly what we will explore in the next video: the fall of the Nasrid Kingdom.